this as well too. So as Lisa had noted, this is our virtual public open house due to public health restrictions for the Growing Opportunity to Lucan-Biddulph Community Improvement Plan. So Jesse, if you could just flip to the first slides. I've done those introductions. We'll go through our agenda. It's a fairly brief agenda this evening. Myself and Jesse have divided up the slide deck between the two of us. I'm going to be speaking a little bit about the project in general, and then Jesse's going to take over to discuss a little bit about the background work that we've undertaken in the development of this project, an overview of what Growing Opportunity is, and then we're going to go into a question and answer period, and then we'll come back to our slide deck and have a little bit of a discussion about next steps in the process. So for those that are attending the open house right now, if you are used to using Zoom, you will see at the very bottom of your screen, when you move your cursor down there, there is a chat bar and a chat button, I should say. So at any time during the presentation, if you'd like to, you can click on the chat button and enter in a question. If you would like to ask myself or Jesse or Lisa anything about the project, we'd be happy to answer any of those questions. Alternatively, you're welcome to save those questions to the question and answer period, the designated question and answer period. If you do enter one into the chat box, we will read it out during that Q&A period. So if we could go on to the next slide there, Jesse. So a little bit about this project. So first thing in order, we'll start with Genesis and a little bit about what a community improvement plan actually is. So a community improvement plan, or what is commonly known as a CIP, is a tool used by Ontario municipalities to encourage physical improvements to specific areas of a municipality. Sometimes and quite often, and then this is the case with the Lucan-Biddulph Community Improvement Plan, municipalities will not target just one area of a municipality, but will target the entire municipality as an area in need of improvement. And what the community improvement plan allows you to actually do is it allows the municipality to offer direct assistance and grants and incentives to business owners and to property owners within the community improvement project area to allow them to make improvements to their properties. So without a community improvement plan, municipalities are generally prohibited from offering those types of financial assistance to private entities, such as property owners or businesses. This is known as the bonusing prohibition under the Municipal Act. So the community improvement plan is one of the very few and almost exclusive ways that a municipality can offer grants or incentives to private businesses or property owners. CIPs often also contain what we tend to refer to as municipal leadership initiatives. So while the primary function of CIPs today is really centers around municipalities offering grants and incentives for private businesses to undertake improvements, CIPs will often also contain a number of policies or directions that encourage municipal councils to look at some strategic initiatives in their municipalities to encourage improvement. Those can be things like improving universal accessibility of public spaces, or improving multimodal transit on transportation on main corridors. It can be about the acquisition of properties to see them redeveloped or consolidated. So those are just a sample of municipal led improvements, and Jesse's going to cover some of the ones that we've identified specifically for Lucan-Biddulph. A little bit about, again, the specific project that is at hand tonight. We've branded this project Growing Opportunity, and that was something that we had discussed very early on in the process with council and with municipal staff. And so over the fall and winter of 2020 and 2021, the township had undertaken the preparation of this document and this project. And again, we branded that project Growing Opportunity, the Lucan-Biddulph Community Improvement Plan. The main goal of this project is to provide financial incentive tools to the municipality to support economic development and good quality development within the township. One of the early focuses of this project was ensuring that the CIP is able to offer incentives throughout the entire township and not just Lucan or other small settlement areas that exist within the municipality. So this goes back to my comment earlier, is that in some cases, municipalities will bring in a community improvement area or a community improvement plan that is designed for a specific area or neighborhood of a municipality. I know that we're quite close to the City of London, and the City of London has a number of those that are targeted to specific areas like the Old East Village or the downtown core. In other cases, municipalities will bring forward community improvement plans that apply to the entire municipality. And this is what the Township of Lucan and Biddulph is considering at this time. So a word on our project timeline. Just as we had said, this project began in September of 2020. It's been a three-phase project, and we're nearing the end of our three-phase project. So we began with our background analysis that took us through September and October and into November of last year. And then we began drafting the community improvement plan through November and January of this year. And now we're starting to enter into the phase of looking at the final product and validating the results of our work with the public. We did host and hold a public workshop and public survey back in the fall to gain the initial input into this process as well too. And we held a second workshop with council and township staff to start to formulate and solidify some of the ideas that we had developed based on the input we had received from the public. So as you can see, if you're looking at phase 3, the approval of the CIP, you can see that we're at the open house that is scheduled, and then the next step in that process is what takes us into April as the council approval of the document. And with that, I'm going to pass the mic over to my colleague Jesse, who's going to walk you through the background work and the details of the community improvement plan itself. So Jesse.
Thanks, Paul. So as my colleague Paul has mentioned, I'm Jesse McPhail. I'm a urban planner with Republic Urbanism, the consulting firm that's been working with the township to prepare this CIP over the last few months. So just to give you an overview, a little bit of the background work that went into this document and kind of dive a little deeper into some of the phasing that went into it. So with respect to the background work that was put into this, the background report was something that was sort of the first stage, and that kind of dominated that first stage of the development of the CIP. And this is usually a first step in a lot of different projects, whether it be CIPs or official plans. And it's essentially providing a lay of the land for the community, and generally provides a look at the following. So it would be policy reviews and community assessments, looking at stakeholder consultation and feedback, and looking to really build emerging themes and recommendations from all that information that we're gathering about the community in the early phases. And this really helps to kind of understand the conditions and needs and priorities that are present in the community and what makes the community unique, and really dive into those. So to make sure that when we are actually developing the incentives and the municipal leadership initiatives as part of the CIP, they're addressing those specific items. And lastly, it does kind of culminate with recommendations for a short list of financial incentives and municipal leadership initiatives that we actually worked with township staff and council to further refine and hone into the initiatives and leadership initiatives that we'll be talking about tonight. So this image here is just kind of a little snippet of one of the context maps that was prepared for the community. So this is actually Lucan here, just a little bit of a snippet and a color into some of the background work that was done for this. So also as part of the background report, Paul had mentioned that that we did undertake two different workshops as well as a public online survey. So this was all outlined in a consultation strategy that was developed at the start of the process. So this strategy again involved 2 workshops and a public survey. The public survey and first stakeholder workshop were designed to coincide with the development of the background report. So this was us reaching out to the community and really looking for feedback for those who kind of live and do business within the community. You guys know your community better than we do. So we're looking to tap into that information. And so I'm happy to report actually that we were able to engage with over 330 local stakeholders in the community, whether it was through the workshops or through the public online survey. And so just getting back to those, the first workshop and the public survey, once those were completed and the background report was prepared, a second workshop was held to review the findings of that background report and identify some preferred incentives and municipal initiatives based on the findings.
If I could interrupt very quickly, Jesse, I'm just going to add and just stress that I know myself and Jesse were really, really pleased with the turnout that we had and the involvement from the public to have over 300 stakeholders engage with us throughout the project, whether it's the attendance at public meetings or through the online survey, is a really, really great turnout for a community the size of Lucan Biddulph. And Lucan Biddulph should be very proud of the engagement and the participation from its residents and other stakeholders.
Certainly. So the background report ultimately, in addition to those leadership initiatives and incentive programming, community priorities were kind of the main synthesis of all that information. So we've kind of posted up here some of the main themes and some recurring themes that we were able to pull out of that background analysis, which really kind of helped shape the document that it is right now. So in terms of, some examples are looking for planning for growth properly. So, the township is experiencing a rather high rate of residential growth. So how do we look to augment that and complement that with commercial growth or other economic development initiatives to ensure that there's a balanced community growing? Affordable housing was another one that came up, particularly in the public surveys and the workshops. Evaluating solutions or conflicts between vehicles and non-vehicles, so pedestrians and there are a couple different jurisdictions in the community between the Ministry of Transportation, County of Middlesex, as well as local roads. So how are we working to improve those spaces, and what are some of the challenges that pedestrians face by navigating those spaces? And even simply a lot of discussion around tax or financial incentives for businesses. So how are we looking to support commercial growth and non-residential growth and employment in the community? So all of that background work culminated in the development of the community improvement plan, which we've maintained the title Growing Opportunity. So now I'm going to kind of give a brief overview of what that document entails, and sort of the financial incentives and leadership initiatives that are contained within it. So in terms of the plan itself, so this plan is intended to encourage and support community improvement projects and initiatives throughout the township over the next 10 years. So this is what you would call a planning horizon in planning speak. So that's sort of the lifespan of the plan. And as Paul was alluding to earlier, in accordance with direction and priorities established at the start of the process, the entirety of the township of Lucan Biddulph was designated as a community improvement project area. However, specific incentives will be available for specific areas and for specific projects. So as an example, there are some facade improvements geared towards the more central commercial areas, but there's also a rural incentive program that's geared to more rural areas outside of those urban areas. So those will have specific eligibility criteria within them to balance out those incentives throughout the community. And lastly, Township Council will have full discretion as to which incentive programs to activate from year to year and which leadership initiatives to pursue. So this plan is essentially a toolbox that municipal council can reach into when they wish from year to year and decide to activate, 3 or 4 or all municipal incentive programs, or they can activate one. It's something that they can use and they can put those back in from year to year. And they can also allocate different levels of budget for each of these programs. It's the same thing for the municipal leadership. So these would be projects that would be undertaken by the township to complement improvements on private lands. So these municipal leadership initiatives are more so recommendations within the plan, and they're designed really to encourage and inspire projects in the community. They're not necessarily a to-do list or a commitment on behalf of council to undertake these. So these will be dependent on township priorities and budget and resources that are available from time to time. So as I mentioned, the plan itself has 7 financial incentive programs and 4 municipal leadership initiatives. that it contemplates, and I will go through those right now. Right after I go through the guiding principles of the CIP. So these guiding principles, actually getting back to the priorities that were identified at the end of the backgrounding exercise, these guiding principles were kind of identified as the main pillars on which the community improvement plan, or CIP, would be developed and built on. And these are kind of principles that will be used to help inspire, you know, the review of applications for funding, and ensuring that that projects, when they come in requesting funds, that they're aligned with these guiding principles. So these 5 guiding principles were balancing population growth with economic growth. So again, talking about that residential growth and balancing that with appropriate non-residential growth. Community recreation and public space, that was noted as a very important aspect and priority amongst the community members, especially through the online survey. Supporting culture, heritage, and community identity, community accessibility, and mobility. So what I mean when I say that is, you know, barrier free. So how wheelchair accessible are some of the stores? Are there upgrades needed to washrooms or parking facilities? But also on the flip side, just mobility in general. How difficult is it for pedestrians to cross the street? Is the street nice for people to walk down? Are they enjoying it? And lastly, and kind of ties into that conversation, would be Main Street beautification revitalization. So this is a guiding principle that more or less was sort of the original sort of guiding principle or genesis for community improvement plans. They were largely focused on facade improvements and streetscaping, and they've sort of evolved over time to address some of the other topics that we're looking at here today. So in terms of the actual guiding principles here, each one of these in the plans will have, does have between 2 and 3 individual goals that are more specific. These goals will help the municipality monitor the implementation of the plan from year to year. So there will be goals, and the municipality can either set targets or monitor their implementation to make sure that the CIP is on track to being implemented, and identify any changes or issues that may come up over the lifespan of the plan. Now, as far as the financial incentive programs go, I will get into those now. So the first is the beautification program. So this program here is intended to encourage visual improvements to buildings or sites in specific areas of the community. So this is geared toward improving the look, feel, and character of the community. And it's generally those types of projects that are involved with facades, you know, redevelopment of storefronts, signage. It's really about beautifying and looking at the exterior visual aesthetic of buildings and properties. So this would be available for commercial or other non-residential properties in specific areas of the community. So in terms of the grants that would be available for this, there's a construction cost matching grant. And this would cover 50% of the costs of the eligible works up to a total of $5,000. And there's also a professional fee matching grant, which would be 50% of the professional fee costs associated with the project up to a total of $1,500. So you're looking at an upward amount there of about $6,500 total that would be available for beautification. The Rural Opportunity Program, this program is meant to encourage and support improvement projects specific to the rural area. So this is sort of the yin to the yang that is the beautification program. The beautification program is more focused to the settlement areas and the more urbanized areas. The Rural Opportunity Program will be available to those areas outside of it. So where we're having on-farm diversified uses, value-added agricultural uses, or other rural commercial uses. These, of course, would be required to comply with the official plan and the provincial policy statement as far as commercial uses in agricultural lands. But as far as those agricultural related commercial uses, this grant program would be looking to support them. And this could involve, the improvement or redevelopment of existing buildings or construction of new buildings to support, a new or expanded agritourism use or a hobby farm or something like that. So in terms of the grants that would be available for this program, there would be a construction cost matching grant. So this would be available 50% of the construction costs up to $5,000. There is a planning and building fee rebate program that would cover up to 50% of the fees to a maximum of $2,500, as well as a professional fee matching grant. So this would cover potentially up to 50% of the professional fees associated with a project, up to $1,500. So the conversion, expansion, and redevelopment program, this is more intended to support private sector investment in the redevelopment, renovation, or expansion of commercial or mixed use buildings. So this would, where the beautification program looks at the exterior of properties and buildings, this program would deal more with the interior and the meat and potatoes of that building. So this would be looking to support either new or expanding commercial or other non-residential uses. So whether businesses want to renovate the interior or undertake an expansion to their building, this would look to support them there. This program would also support, would also provide financial incentives to support the undertaking of any studies that may be required, particularly for environmental site assessments. So this could be used for what would be normally called brownfields. So these would be properties that may have contamination or may be believed to have contamination on them, or if they're going from a commercial use to a lighter use. Sometimes there are environmental assessment studies that are required to ensure that the future occupants of those buildings and properties aren't negatively affected. So there would be grants available in this program to help with the costs of those studies. So as far as the funding that would be available here, there would be a construction cost matching grant, and this would be 50% of construction costs up to a max of $5,000. A planning and building fee rebate. This would cover 50% of the planning and building fees associated with the project, up to $2,500. A professional fees matching grant. This would be 50% up to $2,500. And for the specific environmental site assessment studies, so this would be either a phase 1 or a phase 2 environmental site assessment that would go towards a record of site condition down the road. This would cover 50% of the costs of those studies up to a maximum of $5,000. And the fourth one on this page here is the industrial stimulus program. So this industrial stimulus program is meant as a industrial only type of grant. So these are your employment areas or your heavy industries and heavy employers in the community. So this program would be intended to offer financial incentives for new or expanding employment uses that are providing an exceptional project or a lot of investment in the community. So the township's looking to sort of incentivize those exceptional projects. What would be particularly specific for this program here is it would be based on a rating criteria. So there'd be a scoring criteria that the project would be reviewed against, and a score would be applied, and then that would indicate the level of grant that they would be eligible for. So the types of grants that could potentially be eligible for projects under this program would be a planning and building fee rebate. So this would be 50% of the fees up to a maximum of $10,000. A professional fee matching grant, which would be 50% up to a maximum of $2,500. Or a development charge reduction, which could range depending on their score from a 40% reduction all the way up to an 80% reduction based on the score of the project. So for that 80% reduction, that's a heavy investment in the community. That's a very exceptional project. And the township would be looking to encourage that and reward that sort of an exceptional project. The final three financial incentive programs in the plan would be the additional residential unit program, affordable rental housing program, and accessibility program. So for the additional residential unit program, this is intended to encourage the creation of new residential units, rental units particularly, which would be also known as secondary suites or accessory apartments. And this would be geared toward helping diversify the housing base in the township. There's a lot of single detached or semi-detached that are coming in. So looking to provide those different options for folks looking for different styles or formats of housing in the community. This program would also be intended to bring illegal or non-compliant units up to code with the zoning bylaw and building code. So really encouraging, if there are existing units that were established without obtaining proper permits, and someone is looking to rectify that, this program could potentially help them achieve that compliance and maintain that unit in the community. So the grants available for this program would be a construction cost matching grant. So again, 50% of the costs up to $5,000, a planning and building and fee rebate, which would be 50% up to $2,500, professional fee matching grant, and this would be 50% up to $1,500. The affordable housing unit program, this would be a little similar to the additional unit, except this would be more geared toward affordable housing units. So by definition, either 80% of market rate or whatever definition that the municipality wishes to use. There are definitions contained in the plan. So this is intended to encourage the creation of new affordable units in the township, and again, to diversify that housing base. So these units, as a condition of eligibility, they must be maintained as affordable for a minimum of 10 years in order to maintain that grant. So if they are receiving funding under this program, they would be required to sign an agreement and have that agreement registered to ensure that those units remain affordable rentals and they're not, converted or increasing in rents. So the grants available for this program would be a construction cost matching. So this would cover 15% of the construction costs up to $5,000 per unit. And this would cover the first 4 units of a new development. A planning and building fee rebate. So projects could receive up to 100% rebate on planning or building permit fees up to a maximum of $5,000. A professional fee matching grant is also available at 50% up to $2,500 to cover professional fees. And a development charge reduction grant would also be available to cover up to 80%, or relieve rather up to 80% of the development charges associated with the new development at the discretion of the township. So again, that could be a hefty amount. So again, the requirement for this program would be that the applicant would need to enter into an agreement, have that registered on title to make sure that those lands, particularly the units that are developed on the lands, are maintained as affordable units. Last but not least, one of the main priorities in the community, one of the main challenges identified through the stakeholder consultation was accessibility and barrier-free issues throughout the community, and particularly the older parts of the built-up settlement areas of Lucan. So this accessibility program is really designed to address those challenges, and it's intended to support barrier-free and accessibility improvements to commercial or other non-residential properties in the township. So this could cover, the installation of ramps or new railings, barrier-free conversions to bathrooms. They're all geared towards improving that mobility and accessibility for everyone. And the construction costs grant for this one would be 50% up to $5,000. The planning and building fee rebate would be up to 75% of the fees relieved, and the professional fee matching grant that it would be available would cover 50% up to $1,500 for that grant. And moving on to the municipal leadership initiatives. So again, where the financial incentive programs are geared towards private development and private investment in the community, These municipal leadership initiatives are geared more toward the public realm and projects that the township itself would seek to undertake to complement that private investment. So these four here are community accessibility mobility audit, a streetscape improvement strategy, township design guidelines, and public land acquisition and improvement. So the community accessibility and mobility audit, this would be geared toward looking at, Main Street buildings, sidewalk conditions, involving the community to identify challenges that may exist for mobility and accessibility for largely for pedestrians and other non-vehicular modes in the community. And this audit would be really geared towards providing better insight to the township on potential solutions to those challenges for improving safety and a better general experience for everyone. The streetscape improvement strategy would kind of tie in to the community accessibility and mobility audit. But this could be done as a separate undertaking. This would assist in identifying intervention opportunities in greater detail. So when I say intervention opportunities, I mean specific projects like sidewalk bulb outs or bike lanes or little parklets or landscaping. And this would again be geared towards improving the experience of the public realm in specific areas. As far as township design guidelines, this would be an initiative would assist the township in preserving and enhancing the character of particularly downtown core areas and main corridors of the community. So the township does have a rich built history that we would look to balance with new development. So we don't want to put a moratorium on new development and new designs and new architectural styles, but we also want to be respectful to the established character of a lot of the heritage, the built heritage in Luke and Biddulph. So these township design guidelines would be recommended to be developed to strike a balance between existing built forms and heritage buildings. And ideally, they would promote different standards or guidelines for rural development versus urban development. And they could include things like, different materials or architectural styles for certain areas, as well as landscaping standards or signage guidelines and the like. And the last municipal leadership initiative would deal with public land acquisition and improvement. So one of the priorities that was identified by the community as well as members of council through the backgrounding exercise was that the township community really loves their public spaces and their public gathering spaces, but what we heard was there's just not enough of those within certain areas. So let's take Lucan, for example. So this public land acquisition and improvement initiative would seek to identify candidate lands for acquisition by the township in strategic locations where improvements could lead to new gathering spaces or new parks or other public amenities that could be used by the public. So this could be an actual strategy or a combination of smaller micro efforts. So this would involve, evaluating existing township lands that are owned and looking at ways to improve them, as well as conducting, internal and external assessments and meetings with private landowners or other areas of the community to identify potential areas to create new public spaces. So those are the 4 municipal leadership initiatives that would be recommended in the community improvement plan. And so we're just about to wrap up the sort of overview of the community improvement plan here. And I just wanted to quickly go over the grant process that's outlined in the plan, because I'm sure some of you may have some questions about how do I go about applying for these grants? How do I obtain these grants? So I'll quickly walk through this with you here. So as you see, the graphic on the screen goes from left to right. So an applicant would look to pre-consult with either a member of staff at the township or a CIP coordinator is recommended to be designated. So they would pre-consult, and as part of that process, that coordinator would identify different challenges and look at eligibility criteria and really kind of give them an idea of what they'd be looking at in terms of the types of grants that they'd be eligible for and whether they would maintain or meet that eligibility. And then they would submit that application. It would go through a review process. And then ultimately council would be the approval authority on making a decision for issuing grants. So the CIP coordinator or any implementing committee that would be used to review these applications would present a recommendation to council on whether or not to fund certain projects or not, and the amount of funding that certain projects would receive. So let's say, you know, an application goes through and it gets approved. So then following that, all funding would be covered by a funding agreement. So this would outline the terms and conditions of those funds, what they could be used for, when they would be released. And then if there was any additional requirements, such as obtaining building permits or planning approvals. So those works would be undertaken. The township would go out once those works are done. They would inspect or review the project, and if everything's good and, you know, the applicant meets the requirements of that funding agreement, then that's when funding would be issued for that project. So be similar to an application process that you would see for a building permit or another planning application. So with all of that kind of said, I'm sure there's some questions. So now we will open it up here.
And Jesse, I can say, I know that there were a couple people who entered in some questions during your talk, and I might call on those individuals to share their thoughts.
Perfect.
For those that would like to ask a question and you are on Zoom, if you drag your cursor down to the bottom, you will see, aside from the chat bar and the number of participants and a shared screen function, you'll see a reactions function. And if you click on that, you'll be able to raise your hand. And that'll let us know that you have a question. Otherwise, please feel free to turn on your camera and physically raise your hand as well too, if you'd like to do that, if that's your preference. But the first question that we had was from Pat. And Pat, I know that you were asking about accessibility and whether there were going to be any grants designed around that. Did you want to ask any further questions, a clarification on that, or specific questions with regards to the accessibility grant?
Well, I did see that you are making that available. I just thought at one point it was mandatory to have a building made accessible, so not stairs leading into an old building. I just wondered if that's still the case, or.
So the building code has changed quite a bit from when a lot of the existing construction was built in Lucan Biddulph. There is a requirement for, I believe it's municipalities or all buildings and public spaces in Ontario to be barrier-free or ADOA compliant by 2025. I believe that is. But this program is kind of intended to work sort of coincide with that and really help people get on their way to improving accessibility to their buildings. We did notice, you know, especially, you know, in areas that do have an older building stock, particularly, you know, in downtown Lucan, there's a lot of stairs leading up to storefronts and that. So this program would really look to help people find solutions to those and achieve that ADOA compliance.
Okay, I have another question if I can. I heard that the grocery store downtown is moving to some land outside of Lucan. And I just wondered what was going to happen to that space downtown. It's just, I'm sure you haven't got there yet, but I just wondered if there was any thought on.
We might have to rely on our friends, either Ron or Lisa. If you had any information that you might be able to share with Pat, it'd certainly be I would make a comment this. I'm going to draw the link between the CIP and that issue, is that certainly the CIP is designed to hopefully encourage any adaptive reuse of any of that type of empty space, and to facilitate some, you know, good quality development and the occupancy of those spaces if one were to become vacant. And so I know as a part of our mandate, we weren't intended to look at, you know, any one specific building, but to look at the incentive program overall. But I'm hoping that may be helpful in terms of drawing the parallel between that potential vacancy and the program. But I'd also throw it out to Ron or to Lisa. I'm not sure if you had anything to add to that. Or
I was going to say, Pat, I can neither confirm nor deny
That's the rumor.
But at this point, I think we're setting ourselves up with this community improvement plan to be able to deal with that should that occur. We'll put it that way.
No problem.
Okay.
I understand.
Thanks so much, Pat. We also had a question from Peter about the conversion and expansion and redevelopment grant and the ability for nonprofit or for-profit to apply for that grant. So Peter, did you want to share your thoughts or your question with the group, not to put you on the spot?
Yeah. I was just wondering if it was only for-profit entities, or could our museum, Donnelly Museum, apply, as we have Sheila on the line here. Would those type of entities be able to apply for the program?
Yeah, so the intent of the program is really for non-residential development. So that would cover, that would cover commercial, institutional uses and the like. So whether it would be for-profit or non-profit wouldn't really be particularly a factor in it. It's more so the use. So with these ones, it would be generally kind of, buildings or uses that would be, generally open to the public or serving the public or providing a service of some sort.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Good question.
Is anybody else that has any questions? Anybody want to raise a hand or turn on their screen or? See Matt turned on his screen. I'm not sure, Matt, do you have a question you'd like to share?
Oh, there we go. Sorry, I was trying to figure it out there.
Yeah, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, so I just had a question with the accessibility stuff and all that.
Yeah.
I read through your program there. Now, with any upgrades that are required, does this plan, I guess, trump grandfathered in building code stuff? I don't know how to word it better than that.
So yeah, good question. So this would be less of a regulatory document and more of a supporting document for people looking to undertake those works. So you would have things like the Ontario Building Code and the zoning bylaw. The zoning bylaw wouldn't really cover necessarily barrier-free items, but a lot of it would be covered under the Ontario Building Code. That's sort of the be-all end-all as far as requirements and legislated requirements. This program's more so that, if you are going to do those works, hey, we have some money that's available for you to help you, because sometimes those works can be quite expensive depending on what you're doing. So it's more so a supportive sort of side program to it. It's not really any sort of regulatory or authoritative in that sense.
Yeah, I think that's what I was kind of asking. Is it essentially a bylaw that can trump the code, we'll call it?
No.
Gotcha.
It's there's nothing like that. No.
Beautiful.
So, and if I could add to that, Jesse and to Matt, is one of the things to remember is a part of that pre-application process. So if you are thinking about applying for a grant, any of the grants, your first step is to meet with municipal staff to say, hey, I'd like to apply for a grant, and I have a project that I think would be a great project to try. And at that point, the municipal staff will be able to direct and say, you know what, this is a great project, but it also does need a building permit, or it may need another planning permission, etc. And they can help connect you with the building official to help make sure that any project that is being undertaken is in compliance with code, etc.
Perfect.
Actually, further to that too, I'm just thinking as far as something I did forget to mention for the application process, and one of the main eligibility requirements to receive grant funding under the CIP is that it's any of the grant funding, it's not retroactively applicable. So if you are planning on undertaking a project, we would strongly encourage you to consult with the township beforehand to make sure that you're not dealing yourself out of potential incentives by undertaking that project before you apply. So that's something that's important to remember.
It's a very good point, Jesse. It's kind of been a long-standing legal principle with the development of community improvement plans since their inception, kind of 40 years ago, is that they are not retroactive. So the project would have to be a new project and can't be completed at the time of the application. Councillor Regan, I know that you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just wondering with community improvement to me also talks about education. So you may have covered it, but is there education, is there grants for things like culture, heritage, ecosystem studies, making young people aware of what's going on in the community historically, those sorts of things? I know that with we were talking with this in Parks and Rec with some of the like sort of the fresh, anyway, just sort of educational areas for the community. I don't know, is that part of this as well?
It not specifically in terms of grants for specific initiatives like that. It would be more towards like, are you talking about like, if there's like physical improvements like educational signage or like different features like that? Or are you talking more programming esque?
Actually both. I mean, I just think, there are, we see a number of signs and there's a number of things that are going on in the community, the murals that we have that speak to the, to the heritage of the community and that sort of thing. And that's kind of important, I think. I just didn't know if that was all part of that or if you had covered that yet. Sorry. I came in.
Yeah, no, it's a good,
yeah, no
that's a good question.
If I could, Jesse, I would agree with Jesse that it is, there's probably like a more indirect connection between the CIP and that type of educational component that you're speaking about. But a couple of the things that, so if we were talking about urban design guidelines, for instance, which is one of the things, the municipal leadership initiatives, there's certainly through the development of urban design guidelines an opportunity to start looking at historical narratives that exist within the community, and how do we tell those through new development, or how do we tell those through those stories through public realm interventions. If we were looking at public space acquisition and the development of new parks, certainly if there were sensitive environmental features that were located, or there was kind of an ecological narrative or story to be telling and sharing with the public, so there'd be opportunities to kind of introduce that kind of educational component or the narrative and storytelling through some of those initiatives.
Okay,
Jesse,
thanks.
sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you if there's other components you think.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much what I was going to say, is the beauty about how the municipal leadership initiatives are kind of outlined is that it kind of gives the township a lot of flexibility in what they can make it what they want in terms of streetscape improvement strategy. If part of that strategy, a big initiative under that wing is going to be educational signage and celebrating our built heritage, and that can certainly be within the township's purview to include that. Yeah.
Well, there's always a teacher in the room, guys. Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. We have another question from Katie, and Katie had mentioned that she was joining the meeting late, and had a question about timelines. Katie, did you want to share your question with the group? You may be speaking. You may or may not be. If you're trying to speak, you may be speaking with your mute on.
Hi guys. Sorry,
Hi,
I missed part of the call there, and so Lisa actually messaged me and gave me some of the details I was looking for. Yeah.
Oh, very good. Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I will share with the larger group though. No problem. If you don't mind, Katie, I'll share. You had a question about the timelines. So the project wrap up that we're looking to in April for council adoption, and then subsequently after that, the implementation of the plan, just to share with the larger group. But thanks so much for asking that question.
Thanks.
Cheers. Any other questions from the group? One last round.
We have one from Pat.
Oh, we have Pat and I think Peter.
I just wondered, you mentioned the accessibility and improvement of the sidewalks, and how you would probably need a group of people to look at that. I wondered how do you volunteer for that, or something I might be interested in?
Yeah, good question. So the municipal leadership initiatives that are outlined in the community improvement plan, they're just to take a step back, they're more of a recommendation and sort of meant to inspire municipal led projects that can be undertaken by the township to complement sort of that private sector investment. So there isn't with that said, they're not necessarily a commitment. So it would be up to township council if they want to pursue, you know, one or all or none of these initiatives. We hope they'd want to pursue at least one of them, but it would be at that time that township council would determine that, and they would likely it's likely, I think, that they would likely put out a call for, you know, working with the community or some level of engagement, or have a committee put together to help drive that project. But again, the way it's set up is we don't want to write a check on behalf of the township and say that you guys are held to this, you know. So we leave that flexibility so that they can gauge what the priorities and budget and resources are at the time.
And Peter, did you have a question as well?
Yeah, just to follow up on the timing of the grant. So once it's passed, whatever direction we take, so with that, and then do we set a date when the grants are open and available, or is it immediate, or how does that work?
So that would be up to council's discretion as well. So there's kind of two recommendation in the plan would be to set up a preferred way, would be like a window. You would have a window either annually or biannually, where you would have an intake of applications, and that's just to make sure that you're making an efficient use of time, and you can more accurately gauge what the budget should be for these programs. So that being said, and then in terms of the actual initiatives that are available, it'll also be at council's discretion as to which of the programs that you'd like to activate. So some of these programs, it may not be you know, financially feasible or efficient to offer all 7 programs at once. It may be a good idea to, you know, offer a couple for the first year and see how those work out, see how the budget works out, and then, you know, evaluate the resources for the following year. So that would be a kind of at council's decision, what to offer from year to year, and then whether they want to have a rolling intake where it's just kind of on an ad hoc basis, or you know, an intake period. Let's say in May, we're accepting applications till the end of May, and then if you don't get in, then you have to come in next year.
What we often see with municipalities when they start to go through this process of implementing, and just to build on what Jesse said, is when we do have municipalities that are undertaking or looking to have the opportunity to undertake, is probably the best way to describe it, any number of incentive programming, is we typically recommend, you know, that first couple of years, maybe start with 1 or 2 programs that you're going to think are going to have the biggest impact and the biggest uptake in them, as opposed to kind of offering them all at once. And what we see is to encourage, or we suggest, is to encourage municipalities to look at doing an intake period for the first at least 1 to 2 years. So because that intake period, so say we're going to open it up in January, and we're going to allow that intake period to go into March, because that's often when people are planning the construction projects before the thaw, and before people start applying for building permits into the spring. And that just allows an opportunity for the community and the township to gauge the response that's being the incentive programming is intended for, and to see if there are a ton of applications, or maybe there'd be very few applications. So after going through that, in that initial year, a set intake period, what we'll often see is that municipalities will then, if there's still money left over, open it up to ad hoc submissions for the remainder of the year. But as Jesse had said, there is certainly the discretion is there for the township to whether or not to do a specific intake period, or just to allow ad hoc submissions throughout the course of the year. I put myself on mute. Any other questions from the group? Got myself reversed there. I spent too much time trying to unmute myself, and then I managed to mute myself while trying to speak. So if there are no other questions from the group, we may potentially be at a wrap-up stage for this. And if that's the case, I'm going to invite Jesse, if you wanted to open up your screen and talk a little bit about next steps with the group.
Yep. So as far as the next steps in the process, we're sort of rounding out the final stage 3 of this project, and with that, we have the wrap up of this open house. Following this open house, the township will be hosting a public meeting on April 6th at 6 p.m. virtually as well. So that'll be next week. So this will be actually a statutory public meeting that would be, similar to something like a zoning bylaw amendment or an official plan amendment, and that would be with council. So on that platform, that would be the environment where the public or agencies or interested parties can make formal submissions to council on the plan. So, general comments, questions, concerns, support, and council will consider all of that feedback and comments received both at the open house tonight as well as the public meeting. And we'll consider that feedback and decide on whether to adopt the plan as is or adopt it with revisions, or maybe defer a decision on it if they feel that there is a need to revisit some of the sections of the plan or details of the plan. But that adoption would actually be done at a future council meeting following the public meeting. So with that being said, again, without wanting to write a check that isn't ours to cash, we do anticipate that council decision on this plan will be coming in late April. And then just as a note further to that, the adoption of this plan will be by way of bylaw. So if Township Council does adopt the community improvement plan, an adopting bylaw will be passed. That bylaw is subject to appeal under Section 17 of the Planning Act. So there is a 20-day appeal period following that decision. And if no appeals are received following that decision, the plan will come into force.
Okay.
So
go ahead,
that concludes sort of our presentation. I want to thank you on behalf of our firm Republic Urbanism and on behalf of the township staff who've really helped us out throughout this project, Lisa DeBoer. And I'd just like to note that if you have any more, if you'd like any more information on growing opportunity or wish to submit comments or questions or feedback, or if something comes up that you didn't quite think of when we were in the presentation, you can feel free to visit the township's website that's up on the screen, or you can contact Lisa directly, and she will get us in touch with you to hopefully answer your questions or have a chat.
Great, thanks, Jesse. And with that, I'm going to invite Madam Mayor to say a few closing remarks.
Great. Well, thanks very much for that, Paul. And Paul and Jesse, just want to thank you for the presentation today and for managing the open house. You know, the great thing about this virtual platform, as much as I would love to be with everyone in person, it does allow for some broader accessibility. I know that because it's broadcasting live on YouTube, that there could be some people watching it via YouTube, but it also gives everybody the opportunity to kind of watch back in the coming days. So as Jesse said, you know, if there's any comments from anybody that's watching this now or watching it back, please pass them on to Lisa, and she can throw them over to Jesse and Paul to be included. But I just really wanted to thank those that have joined the public meeting and have offered questions and conversation and dialogue tonight, and then in the prior meetings that we've had. And Paul, he mentioned it earlier about the public participation in the survey, and really that really is unprecedented. There's a number of communities in Middlesex County that are going through the same process that we are, and they haven't gotten nearly the amount of feedback and engagement that we have. So I want to thank our residents of Lucan Biddulph. Anybody that has known me and my on council and kind of in the background, I am a huge fan of community improvement plans. And I really think that this document, if council adopts it, is going to be an exciting guiding document for the community. It kind of, you know, goes hand in hand with the strategic plan that we just updated. We've got a recreational master plan. We're going through an official plan update, and all of these go together to work to provide guiding principles and a vision for our community. So I'm excited to see it roll out. I know that our businesses, our nonprofits, the township itself will have lots of opportunity to invest in different ways in our community that hadn't been available to them before. So I'm excited, and I think the process has been great. So thank you, everybody. And again, thanks to Paul and Jesse for their leadership. And as they mentioned, Lisa's been the staff lead on this. So her involvement has been greatly appreciated as well.
Thanks so much, Madam Mayor. And I would back that up, that Lisa has been that our key contact and has been great to work with on this. So on behalf of myself and Jesse, thank you, Lisa, for helping us through this process as well. But anyway, on that note, without any other questions or comments, I'll just reiterate Jesse's thank you for everybody for coming out tonight and participating and asking the questions. And we flash our screen back up again if you'd like to visit the website and Lisa's contact information. She will forward any questions or comments over to us, and we can respond back to you. But on behalf of our team and on behalf of the Township of Lucan-Badolph, thank you very much for coming out this evening, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone.